step up in class, right? This is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations and is basically Patrick Mahomes away from a Super Bowl title, arguably. But that's a good team, and this will be a good test.
I fully agree, and you sense that energy from the coaching staff throughout the week. Just understanding, as you said, this is a measuring stick. This is a legitimate Super Bowl contender coming to your facility and ready to engage in a pretty intense, purposeful practice. And so we're going to get a look on two fields of how the Bears measure up.
Now, the left tackle storyline continues to be the hot and heavy one. What do you make of the Theo Benedict getting reps with the ones here? Is it more about Theo? Is it more about Braxton? Is it more about Ozzie?
There's two things here, Ant, and one of them is an optimistic look and the other one is a pessimistic look. And the pessimistic look, let's just start there, is that, look, like they went into this with a three-man competition and none of the three people seized the opportunity to convince them that they were the right man for the job. The Bears told us in the offseason that they wanted to try to get this line stabilized as soon as possible. And now here we are just a few weeks from the regular season, and it's like, oh, we got more time to figure this out. The positive side of this is it tells you have a coaching staff that's open-minded. And Theo Benedict is one of these guys that, with a new coaching staff and a clean slate, has taken advantage of his opportunity and shown growth and shown the willingness to be coached. And so this coaching staff has shown, like, if you prove some things to us, we're going to give you an opening to try to compete for a job. And so we'll see where this goes in the coming weeks. For me, on the whole, it's unsettling that a three-man competition is now pivoted to a fourth man to try to find an answer.
Yeah, it's very unsettling. I mean, as I was saying earlier, Kieran Amagaji is turning out to be Velus Jones somehow. I don't know where that came from, but that's the reality. It seems like
it's the foot speed.
Well,
that's the biggest comparison. Yeah. They're both incredibly fast.
Yeah, maybe we can try him at running back.
There you go. But I think that they've concluded that it would be a mistake for Ozzie Trapillo to open the season at left tackle after playing right throughout his college career. Yep. And going against a guy that is known for all sorts of exotic defenses in terms of Brian Flores with the Minnesota Vikings, it just seems like that's fraught with peril. So it's Braxton Jones's job, and guess what? Maybe he's not ready. And this just looks like. This looks like you're making up a player, and I'm not being mean about that. I heard what Rouser said. They made unbelievable strides and all this stuff, but you worry about it. You just can't help but worry because obviously the guy with the experience would be the obvious candidate.
When you made me even more unsettled, Mully, and now I'm going to tell you something that's going to make you even more unsettled, because in the end of game situational period that they did at the end of yesterday's practice, Dayo Adengbo put Theo Benedict in a shopping cart and pushed him directly back into the quarterback. I'm not kidding. There was a pile up at Caleb Williams' legs, right? And so you see that in a practice in August, and you're like, oh God, right? Like that was almost a devastating moment here where the quarterback got his legs tied up in a pile because the left tackle got completely pushed back. And so these are the things you've got to work through, and you've got to find security, and you got to find comfort somewhere here in these next several weeks. On the Trapillo topic, like, he better be ready to play for you in some capacity somewhat soon. Like, we talk all the time about this draft capital and the value of it, and one of the reasons that the Bears are so consistently behind other teams is because those day one and day two picks never hit at the level that other teams' day one and day two picks hit on. And so, like, you can't get in a state where at the end of the rookie's first training camp, you're saying, oh God, I don't know if he can play for us where we want him to play. You got to keep developing him and keep pushing him to be what you thought he was. Otherwise, you're going to be further set back than you already were.
The running back position is one that Mully and I were talking about probably more off air than on air so far. We got a few hours to keep that discussion rolling here. And we're both of a similar mind that we anticipated the Bears would have done more in personnel, if not in the draft, another veteran by now. And that's not for me to say anything negative about what Kyle Monangas showed in the first preseason game. He's an impressive guy, but I thought they would do something to offset DeAndre Swift's game and get another, guy stylistically who could, kind of bolster that backfield a little bit more. How do you feel about where running back sits right now?
I was more bothered in the spring that they didn't get things done in the draft with a class that was so widely lauded as deep and talent rich as this one was. And now, you see some of the things that Monangai does, and you say, okay, I can see where this can work, and he's really earned the coaching staff's trust with the way he comes to work every day. Now, in that first preseason game, you saw some things both size-wise and technique-wise where in pass pro, it didn't look the way it needs to look when the regular season starts being played, and that's against some backups there, the Miami Dolphins, and so you got to figure that out. I am very, very bullish on DeAndre Swift, and I do think that his union with Eric Bieniemy is going to help him go to places that he didn't go last year, and that maybe he did go a little bit when he was in Philadelphia. And so the Bears have to figure out what that looks like. We know how wedded to the ground game Ben Johnson is. He's going to figure out a way to get DeAndre Swift unlocked in a way that helps the offense get moving. And so it's going to be fun to watch, I think, in the early going, just to see how a reinvented DeAndre Swift can produce.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Dan, maybe you can help us. There seems to be a lot of mythology being built up around the quarterback. We talked a little about what he could do last year, where the improvement had to come from and what they were expecting from him. How good has he been playing? How bad has he been playing? What will we see today and Sunday that either debunks or kind of, I don't know, unfortunately would serve as evidence of issues at that position?
You guys need me to stay until 9 o'clock to fully unpack this topic.
Is it that difficult to unpack? I know.
A little bit it is, Mully, because they have spent so much of the spring and summer just getting him to be competent with the operational stuff, everything that comes from the time you take a play call in your ear to the time that you get the ball in your hands. And so there's been a heavy volume of time and work put into that. And so that's got to show up first and foremost. The operation's got to be clean. Everything's got to look smooth. And so we'll see some of that today. I think everyone will be eager with their own eyes and their own TV sets to see it on Sunday night. Look, this has not been a fireworks show at practice by any means. Caleb had a nice practice yesterday. There were some things to see, particularly at the end of practice with some connections with Roma Odunze, where you say, okay, that needs to show up in the regular season to get this thing humming. But I don't know that this town is ready for how bumpy this is going to be for a while as the Bears try to figure out who Caleb Williams really is as a quarterback. And Ben Johnson's at the forefront of that. And he has not been apologetic about how demanding and direct he's been with the coaching of Caleb. Well, it's only going to get more intense and more pressure packed once the results start to matter, right? Every Monday, this station is going to be alive with reactions to how the quarterback played that are, 15 times more heavy than they've been during the month of August. And so everybody's got to be ready for that. And I think first and foremost, Ben's going to have to adjust a little bit to where Caleb is actually at, more than where the Bears hoped he would be at this point. And that's just a kind of a long-winded way of saying buckle in, guys.
Dan Wiederer is a Bears beat reporter in the media space. I'm not sure exactly how to reset it at the moment, Dad. If you want to break any news specifically and help me out with my reset, feel free to do so, sir.
I cannot break any news today, but I can tell you today is my last day after 12 years at the Chicago Tribune. Amazing opportunity. When I started there, Mully was still writing for the Tribune weekly, right, Mully?
That's right. Yeah.
So we had an army, I think, as Dan Bernstein used to call it. It was just an army. It was 15 people in a given week that were chiming in. It's been a lot of fun to be part of that at the paper I grew up reading. So this will be the end. I actually was up at 5 a.m. today, finishing my last big story for them. I think will run sometime next week on Ben Johnson. And so, we're coming to the finish line of that, Ant.
All right. Well, we will look forward to the announcement or announcements of where else we will continue to consume your work. You did mention the name Roma Odunze there, and he was allowed to sort of fly under the radar a little bit because of our very intense scrutiny on the number one overall pick. But I was, I suppose, adequately whelmed by Roma Odunze, maybe even underwhelmed a little bit by how he looked his rookie season. Because by comparison to some of his contemporaries, there was never a game where I said, Rome just looks like a mismatch issue for the opponents. Roma Odunze just looks like a problem out there at receiver. What have you seen so far in camp in the growth and development of who the Bears hope will become a key playmaker?
You gotta love the way that this kid attacks his craft. He really is very serious about getting better. One of the things he focused on in the offseason with his trainers was adding more upper body strength. And I talked to Antoine Randall the other day about whether he's seeing that show up every day with Rome. He said, look, like, we're getting a high volume of press coverage from this Dennis Allen defense, and you can see in the way that Rome is getting off of it consistently and successfully that there has been progress, and that strength that he's added has helped with the way he, can hand fight and just get off his releases in ways that get him open. This coaching staff loves the way that they can use him. They trust in the way he runs his routes, and I would expect him to be a very big part of where they go this year. And you hope it goes in a direction that's better than it was a year ago. And so that's going to be it's going to be fun to watch, because that's another top 10 pick. And when we're talking about what the Bears have invested draft capital wise, sometimes or at some point these guys that you drafted have to become what you thought they were and what you sold them to be. And I think Rome's on the track to do so, and I've really appreciated the way he's gone about his business.
Dan, we talked a little bit this morning about sort of what's at stake for some players here. I believe it is a week from Tuesday when the final cutdown comes. Bears play Sunday night on national television. They will play in Kansas City the following Friday. Do you believe that this team is easily picked right now, or do you think there are some bubble guys that could really help their cause in Sunday night's game?
Yeah, I mean, look, like, I think we all know that this usually comes down to where special teams value is. And so you're going to have to keep an eye on that the next couple preseason games and see which direction that takes everybody. I think you're trying to establish offensive line depth. We talked about 4 tackles. Can you keep all 4 of them on the 53? And if not, who's the odd man out in that regard? And that's a little bit of a daunting one. Field. Travis Homer's currently hurt. He's been a special teams ace for you. Yeah. Does he have a spot on this roster? There's a lot of those kind of fringe roster decisions, Mully, that I think are going to be fun to watch, I guess, over the next 10 days, 2 days, or I mean, it's about 10 days, right, before they have to make those decisions. Roster cut time is always a little bit daunting. The Bears hope that their roster becomes harder to pick. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Dan, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but I thought one of my takeaways, and I get it, like they didn't play the starting defense, so a lot of people moved up, but their coverage units were awful. And the NFL is encouraging more returns this year. It seemed like every time they scored, they were allowing a return to midfield. It was that is something you got to keep an eye on. And as you say, there are different guys injured and out, and the secondary's beaten up. I get all that, but it's got to be better than it was in that first preseason game.
No question. And you got to hope that that's just because it was with guys that aren't going to be playing for you during the regular season, and it's not because you don't know what you're doing schematically with some of that stuff that's coming. Because, it was not pretty in that opener the other day against the Dolphins. By the way, guys, another little exciting part of today's practice, little footnote for you. Maybe you can talk about it over the next 3 hours. Mitch Trubisky coming back to the practice field at House Hall for the first time since 2020. I got to be honest, I'm kind of eager to see Mitch after practice today, because he can be a little bit of a punchline and a punching bag here, but that dude handled himself the right way when he was here. Obviously, they had the success of 2018, but you hear people in that were part of that team in 2020 really appreciate the way he actually helped them get into the playoffs in 2020 after being benched and sort of having a lot of backs turned on him. So Mitch's return today, I think, is kind of a fun little subplot to everything that's going on out there in Lake Forest.
Tearful video tribute, I believe, is planned. if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong about that part.
It's either Green Day or Sarah McLachlan.
I will remember you. I think Dominic Robinson is a guy who, because of what we saw from Austin Booker in that first preseason game, and what we've seen from Austin Booker in both of his 2 preseasons so far in the NFL, there's understandable excitement there. But before there was an Austin Booker, there was a Dominique Robinson who in the preseason we have tended to get pretty excited about. Between the two, which guy has seemed more poised to really be a contributor at the edge position for the Bears?
Well, Dom has gotten more praise from within the coaching ranks, I think, over really since the spring. And I think, Mully, he was one of 3 names that Ryan Poles offered up yesterday on your areas, along with Theo Benedict and Deshaun Wright, as guys that the coaching staff has really leaned into developing and gotten results out of it. Like the Booker thing is so interesting because he has the 3 sacks against the Dolphins, and then you check the tape and you're like, oh yeah, he had 2.5 at Buffalo last August as well. And so like that production's got to be consistent, and it's got to prove that it can translate over to the regular season when you're playing against better competition. And so this is an opportunity here in these next couple games for Austin Booker to show that flashes can become consistency. The Dom Robinson experiment is fascinating because there's always a lot of chatter in May and June and August about where he can go, and then the regular season comes and he's nowhere to be found. And so I don't know where that's going to wind up, but he's certainly been running with the twos for most of camp, and I think they've got belief that he can become a part of what Dennis Allen wants to do with that pass rush.
How many defensive versus offensive linemen are they keeping? Do we have a good feel? If you're keeping 3 quarterbacks, that's going to take away something from somewhere.
Right.
True. Yeah.
I don't know.
I think you're probably looking at 9 offensive linemen, 8 defensive linemen, right? And then you're trying to figure that out, and then injuries are going to play into that. Like Shamar Turner is another guy, a day 2 pick that hasn't practiced during camp because he's been out pretty much since late July with the ankle injury, and so
he pretty much made the team. But didn't he make the team by being a day 2? You know what I'm saying?
Oh no, there's no question that he's on the team. It's like if he's not going to be ready to play for you in week 1, you have to keep another body around so that your rotation can be, but what you want it to be. And
but
that's where
if you're keeping 8, I mean, you got 5 defensive tackles, and you need those guys. I mean, I'm just saying that is.
And you have an iffy Jalen Johnson. Is he going to be ready week 1?
You've got an iffy Kyler Gordon.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like there's a lot of roster mechanics where you look ideal world and you're like, well, we still got to go play the Vikings in week 1, and we got to make sure that we've got enough bodies to go do that properly. And so, like even the cornerbacks, you've got a bunch of really good cornerbacks, and like a Terrell Smith. Like, where does he fit? Does he make the week 1 53 because they're short at corner? They brought in 4 corners earlier this week just to help them get through the last 2 preseason games, and you're doing roster check yesterday and you're like, Mark Perry? Who's Mark Perry? You know what I mean? Like, we're at that stage of August where there's names on your roster check that you've never heard before, and you're like, good luck to Mark Perry, but I think he's only here for about 12 days.
Well, I mean, like I was saying earlier, like Tyreek Stevenson is a fascinating idea to me. Just the whole thing, you mentioned the fresh start you get with a new coaching staff. I just wonder when you hear Dennis Allen say that, he doesn't really name a secondary starter there. I just wonder, does that mean? And I don't want to revisit the horrible 10-game losing streak and the way they started it. And no one wants to.
I feel like you just did.
But can you trust him? Is there an element where even if he gets a new, for instance, they said they wanted no fights against Miami, and next thing you know, his finger is poking at the guy. I just wonder how all that is evaluated by this group.
2 things. You said 10-game losing streak, and I curled up in a fetal position in the corner. It doesn't feel good. But you also used a word there in talking about Tyreek Stevenson that's huge, and it's trust, right? Like, coaches are looking for trust at this time of year, and they want to know not only can they trust you to do your assignment, but can they trust you to handle your behavior properly? And that's been a question with Tyreek since he got here. He's acknowledged it. He's trying to work on it. But again, you say last week in these practices against Miami, he starts getting into a fight, which was the first rule of joint practices is don't join Fight Club, right? Like, and so Tyreek got himself into some trouble there. And on the trust topic, Deshaun Wright has the trust of Al Harris, who's the secondary coach. He's earned the trust of Dennis Allen and Ben Johnson. And you see a guy who has grown since he got into the league in Dallas with Al Harris as his position coach, and has shown with Jalen Johnson out both during the spring and all of training camp that he can be trusted. And that means a lot to a coaching staff going into a regular season. That means a lot. And so keep an eye on Deshaun Wright here in the coming weeks.
Great stuff, Dan. Thanks a ton. Great catching up with you.